Guys, what's up? Back with Play It Forward. Thanks for joining. Today we got Last Call Lenny with director Julien Lasseur. Did I say that right, Julien? Julien Lasseur right there. We got producer, editor, and production designer Jamie Thalman. Jamie, what's up in LA?
Hey, everybody.
And we've got Brian Groh, writer of Last Call Lenny. Thanks, guys, for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I know you worked hard to get here, so we appreciate it. You guys were nominated by Gareth Smith and Jenny Lee, our previous director duo who was on with Worst Case Scenario. So, guys, we'll just go right into the first question. And it is, why Last Call Lenny? Why did you all decide to make it? Why, Brian, did you decide to? And what, yeah, just why? Why this film?
I feel like that sometimes falls onto me since I'm the writer of it. So I'll just say that came out of it was kind of an amalgam of other pieces I was looking at that I was showing to Julien and Jamie, and it wasn't, something about it wasn't working. It was just based around this kind of Rube Goldberg device that someone uses to.
What's that? I've never heard of that. What kind of device?
Oh, a Rube Goldberg device is where you have a series of mechanisms that trip the next mechanism. So the dumbest down form of that would be dominoes, where you tip a domino.
Oh, I see.
And then it hits the marble, which goes down the thing, and that hits the stick that falls, that sort of thing.
Okay, so like Mousetrap, right?
Like Mousetrap is a game based on a Rube Goldberg device, and and that's.
And I'm sorry, is that like a literary thing? Does it come from there originally?
No, Rube. I think he may have been. It may have been an artist or even an engineer who, Oh, okay. What, you know?
Let's see. I'm gonna look it up. Anyway, but on my end, after the show Project Greenlight in 2014. The rest of us filmmakers got together and we were going to create an anthology film where everyone was going to submit a short film of like about 7 minutes.
Wow, so you guys were on Project Greenlight.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It was like a year ago. I mean, it was about a year that we started the process of writing the short for that anthology series. Mm-hmm. And it's changed pretty drastically since the initial draft. But that was sort of the launch point for coming up with Last Call Lenny. And then the reason that we made it was I feel like I'd been talking about it for a year. And, I told Brian that it was going to get made, and all of a sudden it wasn't really getting made. So I felt like to keep his trust, I was like, all right, we gotta pull together this resources and just make this thing.
Well, Julien and Brian, that doesn't really answer the question, because I mean it's interesting logistically and everything, but I think the question is like Brian, Julien, I'm sorry, as a director, right? You've got to believe in this, and you got to have a vision for it, right? So you've got to understand this film on a deeper level, so you can move all the pieces and choreograph and orchestrate your actors and have a dynamism around it. So what is it about this piece as a work of art, the writing, spoke to you to have you say, all right, I'll work on this film as opposed to another one, whatever. And I've got a vision for this. I know what this film is talking about.
Yeah, totally. I think that, and this is something I learned through creating this piece, but the kind of filmmaking that's most interesting to me is the filmmaking that has a real voice, that encompasses the characters, the world, the tone. Like when you watch a film, you should just feel that it's different, that you're sort of seeing a different point of view or a different world. And so when I read Brian's script, I was really interested in the characters and just this sort of surreal world where there is a Craigslist Kevorkian.
So the voice spoke to you, and how can you characterize that voice? What was that voice? What did you hear?
It's sort of a surreal, dark comedy type tone that I think really connected with me. Like I really connected to the humor, and actually throughout the course of making the film, we ended up cutting back on a lot of humor. So trying to find humor in the morbid, and yeah, trying to get away from the laugh out loud, obvious humor to the humor in sort of the dark everyday, even dealing with you know, a topic like suicide, which is incredibly dark.
Okay. So, I mean, you know, to dig a little deeper at that, you know, definitely, like, I was talking to Brian while we were waiting for you to join, and, you know, it was like, I was like, you know, Brian, you guys nailed it. I mean, that gag, you know, that climactic moment, I actually laughed out loud, which is very rare. You know, hardly, that's, you know, not like me. And so, you know, the gag worked great, and it really pulled off the investment that you guys made up front and that the audience makes up front, paid off. So, you know, Brian, I think going back to you, and then I'll hit you, Jamie, with the same question, so you're not off the hook, man. The Brian, you know, you were saying, so you had this device, this Rube Goldberg device, right? And so it's like this kind of chain of events. And then what's the payoff for you, man? What's the payoff for you as a writer? Like what was that thing? What do you know that was like, yeah, man, this is really this got something.
You know, you don't. I think it's when you understand something. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure Julian's looked at a lot of scripts, and as an actor and as a writer, I've read a lot of scripts where I don't understand the motivations or whatever. But sometimes you get a piece, or when I'm writing, I get a character that I understand so completely, and then that motivates you. I can't wait to see what they're going to say next. And you're writing it down and you're putting it in there. And when that grabs a hold of you, all the way to a through line where you type in the end, and that's just the first draft. Then you got to go back and you're massaging it. And then there's a collaboration where the director is like, why this or why that? And you have those discussions. But to me, that's when you're in your jam. It's like a band. The bassist gets in a riff, and then the drummer gets into a riff, and then all of a sudden you're making music. And that's way different than sitting at the laptop and just typing.
I think to add to that really quickly, I don't know if this film was created in maybe the more traditional or typical sense of you read a script, fall in love with it, and it's like, all right, we're going to move forward. I think the script evolved over time. You know, when we found the location, we ended up shooting in the desert, and we were really inspired about, you know, getting out of Los Angeles and creating a different environment and world for actors to play in. But then also, when we cast Tom, our lead, the script then changed again to accommodate him and his performance and what he was like. So it definitely just sort of morphed along the way. And I think what drove us the whole time was the idea that we were telling this sort of unique story about two characters that we really fell in love with.
Yeah, and I love what you said, Brian, about the musicality of collaboration. I mean, when you really kick in on that gear and things are chiming, then you're jamming, you know, and you're not thinking, and things are coalescing. It's a, you know, definitely a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's like what Julien said. It's like you don't just fall into a script, then we all get our hands on it. I think it's death when people look at the script as a rock. It's got to be a piece of Play-Doh. And when Julian's in there and Jamie's in there and we're pulling it apart, that's when we really create something awesome.
Absolutely, and I think production also, when you're on the location shooting, it should be like that. I mean, do you guys subscribe to that? Julien, did you have a lot of flexibility in you know, improvising while you were shooting, or did you have, you know, kind of a set direction?
I don't think we did a lot of improvisation. We had a pretty small crew, and it was a pretty tight schedule. I think we had a crew of like 8 people total, maybe. I don't know, Jamie, can you speak to this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, the schedule was so tight that like the room for improv from like a performance perspective wasn't really there. You know, I mean, I think like,
or even, you know, putting the camera in a new location, or getting a slightly different angle, or moving
I mean, like it's kind of like what they were saying earlier, where the script and like the way that we approach the world definitely changes once we're in that location. And we got there the night before, and we had all of our props, and we started to do our set dressing, and we started to. Brian made the analogy of Play-Doh. It's like, okay, here's what we have to work with, and we did work it a little bit. So then on the day of, we had a really good sense of like, okay, here's what's going to play, and here's how we're going to. I mean, it's really like preparation is key to all of this. So, to a large degree, we had a lot of it figured out by the time we were on the day shooting.
You guys did a great job. I mean, it's a phenomenal piece. It really works. It looks great. It plays great, and you guys did a really, really nice job. The actors are awesome. Brian, you also acted in it. I don't know if I said that, which is a great performance, well directed. And Jamie, so going back to the question of why, what was it that you were feeling about this piece, and that you put in your production hours and editing hours and set design hours on?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that like when you see your friends really passionate about something, it's hard not to get. It's like contagious, when everyone's excited about something. It's like, all right, maybe there's something really here, so you take a really close look at it. And I don't know, just the opportunity to create a unique world with a lot of found objects. And it's starting to think about like being in the desert, like what does life out there look like? And there's a lot of things that speak to our interests, whether it's jazz or trying to work with animals. Like we have a turtle in it, a tortoise at one point.
Yeah, that turtle did a great job. Good timing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to Julian's credit, like he fought really hard to get a live animal, and
I fought for that tortoise's performance.
Yeah,
say what?
Those are not easy.
I fought for that tortoise's performance. We rehearsed for hours.
Yeah, no, he's convincing.
But it just like goes to show like all these little details went into kind of. It's like we just marshaled all these forces to a unique couple days, and so just the opportunity to be able to pull that off was like, heck yeah, like why not?
Nailed it.
But then also too, from like a subject matter perspective, I mean, more people die from suicide every year than homicide. I mean, like murder, and it's just a subject that I think touches a lot of people's lives. We're in a unique position to be able to comment on it, and it's we're going to take a little bit different of approach. We're not, we're not going to make fun of it, but at the same time, I think like being able to bring some sort of dark humor to what is a really serious subject, it's not something to shy away from, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, I heard a quote or something like this: "It's life's too serious to be taken seriously." So, it kind of works with this. So, which kind of leads us basically to the next question. And I don't know if it's just the end, because the end is a nice little summary of what this film is about. But if you guys can kind of dig a little deeper on it, is what did you want to say with this piece, or what do you think this piece has to say? Is saying.
And Gabe says it in the monologue. He's like,
yeah,
you're faced with the worst. It's like, keep going, just keep going, because you don't know what's around the corner. So that summed it up nice. The monologue.
At the end, you're talking.
Yeah.
And well, it's more than just keep going. I mean, I'll remind the writer that it's focusing on the now, right? He says something about the past is a noose and the future is something else, and all we own is the now. That's all we own, right?
Carpe diem.
Right. Yeah.
I think he finds how precious the now is when he goes back and he looks at he reevaluates his life and the times that he did have, the connections he did make with other people. And that's, I think to us, that was a large part of that. When I was talking about the future, it's like, that's going to happen again, as long as you're present. And that's kind of the motivation from all that.
To me, it was slightly different. It wasn't him, looking at his going back to the past. It was seeing death. It was seeing death right in front of him. That said, oh well, maybe this isn't such a good idea.
He didn't get to make that choice. It's because because of the, you know, whatever you want to call it, fate, that the gun went off in the way that it did. So it bought him that second chance. And to me, that's what caused him to reevaluate a little.
Sure. What about you guys? Julian, Jamie, what do you think? What's this piece? You know, now that you guys are going to look back on this one day and say, hey man, you know, I did this. Maybe even tell your kids about it, and show it to them. What do you hope they get out of it?
I hope they connect with the characters, or, you know, fall in love with the characters. And for me, I really was in love with the idea that you have these two strangers who come together, and through this incident, you know, their lives are forever changed. So I think, yeah, I mean, that for me was the biggest thing, is I really fell in love with the characters.
Well, Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all that for sure. It's like, you know, I think, like, if you, you know, we were flirting with the different, like, reasons for suicide, and, you know, there's a lot of, like, it's a very, very complex issue that can't be boiled down to, you know, this one particular thing. And it's, I don't know, just like the ambiguity of it all is something that I really hope people get. It's kind of like, why did Gabe decide to do this? You know, we're not really answering that. And, you know, what brings him to the terms of, like, moving forward, also, you know, like, we're touching on a lot of different things there. And I think that Brian did a really good job of, like, giving us answers, but then also, you know, there's just, like, a really big gray area, and that's what I love. It's, even in the end of our film, like, there's a little Easter egg that I don't know if you want to talk about. I don't know, with, like, the hand coming down. Nah. Yeah.
I didn't catch that part.
It's ambiguous. I like that. All right. Anyway.
What is it about the ambiguity that you like? What is it about ambiguity?
I mean, I don't know. To me, that's, like, a big part of life. It's like,
I think that's everything. I mean, the subconscious. You should walk away from that film and not be able to explain what it means to you. I mean, that gets saturated into you, and that's why there's a lot of symbolism. And you nailed it when you said, you know, there are so many reasons, and people try to pinpoint it, and that's exactly that suicide list that Lenny presents. Why are you doing this? And it's a checklist, because we want to compartmentalize things. But I don't think you should be able to have that answer when you walk away from that film. You had an experience. You have to be attached to the characters. You have to be entertained, and that will stay with you. But I think that's just part of what's amazing about art, is you can't always explain it. It shouldn't always be easy to explain, but you should be affected. And that was the success of this film, is people were affected. And people wanted to talk to us about their experience in suicide. And they sent emails, and they said, I haven't been able to talk about this. And that's when we knew, great. You don't have to be able to explain it, but people were affected. And that was everything to us. To us, that was our success.
Yeah, that's great. Having people certainly connect with your work and resonate and inspired to, you know, be moved and motivated to discuss it and contemplate it. I mean, that's definitely a wonderful accomplishment of art and an artist, and, you know, having that experience. You know, great job. Kudos, guys. For sure.
Thank you.
So last question, how have you guys changed after making this film?
Well, I mean, do you guys want to go? I got one, but
go, Julian. Take it away.
That's we're just stronger, better. That's it for me.
I think for me, after Project Greenlight, I realized I was coming up short in a lot of areas and sort of pieces that it means to be a director. And after Project Greenlight, I really started to focus in on what is it, the voice that I want to put out in the world. And so I feel like this film was truly the first film that I've been really proud of, that I feel like is true to the voice that I want out there. I think stylistically, with the characters, the dialogue, it felt different than the other films that I had done in the past. So it was sort of an affirmation, I guess, moving forward that, for me, this project was really finding my voice. And now that I have that, my direction is a little more clear to me with the kind of stories that I'm creating now. So yeah, I think in a way I've been a cinematographer for a long time, and even with Project Greenlight, like I submitted with a comedy sketch, which is sort of different than what it means to be a filmmaker and to pursue a short film. And so that's been the biggest change. Is it sort of there's that, and then also working with Brian and Jamie. It sort of solidified our partnership in a major way. And I think that's huge, because I think it really does take a team of great minds to come together and make something, especially when you're dealing with, tight time constraint and tight budget and schedule constraints. Yeah, a little bit of all that.
So it sounds like you're saying you got a bit of more confidence and direction as a filmmaker after making this.
Yeah, and also I think the other thing was the story on the page was much more of a comedy than what ended up turning out that's playing behind you. And so that was really interesting too, is for a while we've been focused on a more broad comedy sense, which again speaks back to the voice, wasn't a true, wasn't my true sensibilities and Brian's. And so when we started cutting the film, we ended up cutting out a lot of jokes because they weren't playing and it just wasn't giving us that mood. Speaking to suicide, it just felt like we were making a joke of it. But more than that, the characters weren't believable. So through the film, we sort of honed in on real performances and real characters, and just thinking about acting in a different way. Like, how do you draw out something that's relatable and real as opposed to making it just slapstick or funny? And how can you speak more to life than creating something that's just for a ha-ha, video, internet sketch or something like that.
Gotcha, that's great. So it sounds like it's helped you mature as an artist.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And have some good collaborators with you. That's awesome. And Jamie, we'll just go right to left.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have to again agree with all of that. I think I would just want to add real quick, like, we touched on, like, finding some of this voice in the edit, and I think that that was really true, and that was really like unique experience for me too. It was just seeing what worked on the page and didn't work in the edit, and you're gonna experience that on every project. So, and then also too, like, just our schedule was really tight, and there were a lot of constraints to everything, but we put a lot into preparing, and I think it was a really, really great exercise. And just like, if you really use everything at your disposal to, you don't want to walk into the room just like, all right, we'll figure it out today. I mean, that there are some projects that do warrant that, and that totally makes sense there. But for this, it worked really well for us to bust our ass for a couple of weeks and, spend a year in writing it and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, we were in the edit forever, and it really, I don't know. I feel good about that.
So now it's all done. I mean, what do you think? I mean, how's it changed? And I'll stop it. Hold on, guys. How's it changed for you? I mean, how last week's film? How's it changed? And
I don't think it was necessarily a change. I think it's an affirmation in that, like, you see a lot of different styles for filmmaking, and you're being, if you as you go down the learning of filmmaking, you're going to be pulled in a lot of different directions. There's going to be some folks that are very successful doing very, certain ways of working. And for us, I think that it's just like what Julien was saying, in the affirmation of an artistic direction. I think also too, in how we work, it helped helped us kind of be like, okay, this is how we're gonna be able to do our next project. You know, you suddenly have a little bit of a roadmap where, I don't know, it's like you can learn about it all you want, but when you actually do it, like you're gonna see what works for you and what doesn't. Like there are projects that, you know, you're not gonna see from any filmmaker.
And how have you changed?
Well, I think you got to be fearless when you get in there and you're making these things, and there has to be a lot of trust. And I think that's what, if anything, it affirmed that us as a team. You know, when I wrote on the page this suicide type device, I had no idea what it looks like until Jamie builds something and takes something and they keep moving the football a little bit farther down the field. And we shot a lot of stuff that we cut. And I think that's what I mean about the fearlessness of it. Let me try this. Let's try this. And this is what's changed. Next time, I think we'll be even more efficient because we realize it's a lot of stuff that doesn't work. And you only find that out whenever your boot's on the ground and you're filming. So, you know, you got to film, first of all.
Yeah.
Because nothing's a failure. Even if you've created something that you didn't like at the end, the learning experience will launch you into the next time. It's going to be better. And that's how you keep out of that rut of mediocrity, is you keep on taking chances. And that's what's great about working with a team like Jamie and Julien, is they're just fearless. They're like, all right, let's try that. Dark comedy about suicide, you know, people would run from that. These guys were like, rolled up their sleeves and they said, let's do it.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think that's a huge thing for any filmmaker, any artist to take away, is that, you know, fearlessness to fail and jump off that cliff and not know if you're going to have wings or not is, you know, critical to experimentation and soaring and realizing, oh, wow, this actually works. So I admire that, you know, 100%. And again, it's really important for anyone watching this to take away from this. And, you know, one thing, Brian, I've got to compliment you on is, you know, you're clearly experienced in, you know, the field, and you're working with a couple of younger guys, and you've got to take direction from these guys. And that's not an easy thing to do. You know, my dad used to always tell me when I told him anything, he'd say it's the chickens. So, you know, that's not easy for anyone to necessarily take a lesson, a colleague or a junior person, or, you know, in age. So how do you approach the learning curve and working with guys that are younger and being open, staying open as an actor and an artist?
To me, it's a perfect recipe. Look, my experience in life helps me tremendously in writing a story. I think it's a disadvantage when it comes to kind of the risk taking. I think these guys, Julien and Jamie, are much more apt to have a different perspective than I'm going to have. You know, I definitely think the filmmaking level is a much more level playing field. The only thing that benefits me in my experience of being out there, I think, is just I have a larger library in my head of characters and life experience. But that's it. Like when we're together, it feels like a pretty level playing field. There's no.
Well, I'm sure it is, and just being open to it is a really cool, really great thing. You know, you know, one of the first things I ever did was work with a guy that I wrote a play and directed him in, and he was like, you know, 60 something, and I was like shaking in my boots directing him. I felt like I didn't have the scars to do it. But, you know, and I admire him 100% for, you know, being true and doing it.
I think that's because a good idea is a good idea regardless from
where it comes from, yeah.
What the person looks like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Brian, remind me, do you recall what we were talking about while before we got live? It was something I wanted to share. You had spoken about.
You wrote it down.
Yeah, did you write it down? Or should I have? Yeah, I should have. You know, and I just had it in my head, and I just flew out.
You know what it was?
Yeah, what was it?
We were talking about, and this reminds me a lot of flexibility, what Jamie was talking about getting in that editing room, is you got to be flexible to, instead of staying to the script or what your preconceived thought is is to go in there and take a fresh look at what the material is. And I think we were talking about preconceived notions and how filmmakers, if you have this idea to succeed, is to—
That's what it was.
Is to look at what's being successful out in the world, whether it's genre or whatever. If you're chasing that, you're never going to find success. You can't look out in the world. You got to look inside of you and find out what's unique about you and what's your voice. And that's something that Julien was talking about, and why this film worked for him and why it worked for all of us, because this script, this partnership, this team, this story appealed to him. In no way did we look at this film and be like, this would do great at festivals, or this will give me an agent. Like, that was not the mentality. It started from what ignites that fire inside of you, and that's intangible. You don't know what it is. We wrote it, and once the script was there, something, all of us, it was kindling, and it appealed to all of us.
But if you're an agent watching this,
say again, Julien?
If you're an agent watching this video, then
right, we'll send him your way. No worries.
IMDb links or something.
No worries. So, guys, I mean, I look forward to the next collaboration. Well done. Thanks for being on the show. Really enjoyed the piece. It's a great movie. Look forward to sharing it with our audience, and great to have you guys on the show. Thank you so much, Brian, Jamie, Julien. Peace.
Thanks for having us.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and leave us a like and or a comment. It makes a big difference. Play It Forward is brought to you by Digipops, where we're building a community to put film and filmmaker discovery in your hands. Here, filmmakers and fans, the creative class, recognizes each other fairly and transparently through a community-curated film festival each quarter. It's coming soon. Thank you.